Hello and welcome to the Pod Awakens. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, talking the Acolyte is Ron. How are you, Ron?
I'm doing good, man. We had another fun episode this week, and we've got another awesome guest with us this time. She is the co-host of the Yap Shesh Star Wars podcast here on YouTube or wherever you get your shows. Also, one of the first people that I ever really interacted with in this kind of online Star Wars fandom space that we're all in. It's always been nothing but super cool and super nice to me, and has really built her brand on being sort of genuine and knowledgeable and accepting of all, and that's something that we really respect around here. So we're glad to have her on the show. Sawyer Vera, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you?
Doing good, doing good, doing good. Excited to talk some Acolyte here with you today. But before we get there, we have our
Ron, I just
preamble
want to
question.
say
What?
first, I want to say first, like you're gonna have to take over introing because if you can give me an intro like that, talk me up. I would feel really great
I
next week.
got you. When you come back from your dad stuff, I'll give you
Yes.
the proper intro for the return. But yeah, so we'll just kind of get into these questions, fire them off here really quick, so our listeners can get to know you a little better. What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
My favorite Star Wars movie?
Yes.
Oh, Return of the Jedi.
Nice. Okay. Nothing more needs to be said there.
No.
Favorite character?
My favorite character is actually Ben Solo.
Mm, okay.
Mhm.
Some Kylo there. And just favorite Star Wars show. It can be animated or live action, or you can do one of each, whatever.
Oh, that is tough. Always gonna have a soft spot for Rebels. Um, but I don't know. We'll see what the next four episodes have in store for us. But the Acolyte is climbing up there pretty high.
Hmm. Absolutely. All
Nice
right.
Acolyte truther. Okay.
Yes.
Um.
You're amongst friends in that regard.
Yeah. But Chiari Mundi. Anyway, so we're going to talk about episode 4 of The Acolyte called Day, which was written by Claire Kiechel and Core Adana. And it premiered June 18th, 2024 on Disney Plus. And the official description was racing to the next target. The Jedi head to a new world as they close in on a clever assassin. So I guess we could just start with our general thoughts. Episode 4. I'm assuming we're almost going to immediately jump to the way that it ended, but I'll let Sawyer, if you want to give us your first thoughts when that episode ended. Uh, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, so I actually did, and I was on the Diet and the Force podcast last night for the recording of their like the reaction. So I was watching it with them, and I did feel like this was the weakest episode for me of the four. Um, but that being said, there were some really great moments with Osha and Jackie, and then Qimir and May. And then that ending scene, of course, was, as Darth Chaco put it, like the perfect anime ending.
Mhm.
And I am terrible at theorizing things, but I look forward to these conversations because I love to hear everybody else's theories. And I feel like the mystery, we still don't even really know what mysteries they're holding because they keep doing this thing, right, where they answer a question we think is a part of the bigger mystery pretty quickly. And it's like, no, 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 there is more going on. And I think that we know far little than what we're being led to believe. So, yeah.
Yeah, Ron, give me your thoughts. First thoughts
Uh,
when it ended.
well, right in lockstep with Sawyer on that. It was my least favorite of the four, but didn't hate it by any means or anything like that. The only thing that I think this was the first episode that sort of fell into that Disney Plus thing that people have had a problem with a lot of the Disney Plus shows. The genuine kind of complaint that people have had about Disney Plus shows is that sometimes they can get a little caught up in this like halfway between a movie and a show thing, where a lot of times it can just feel like you're watching a movie broken up into parts as opposed to an episodic television show. And I think this was the first episode that kind of felt like it suffered from that a little bit. But with that being said, there was still a lot in there to like. There was some really fun character moments, like you mentioned, Sawyer, with Jackie and Osha. I would pretty much die for Basil So all the stuff we got from him or them this week was amazing. And that ending was chef's kiss. A lot of horror vibes there between the spinning around the chair and seeing that Kelnaka's got the wound, and the Sith sort of drifting down in the background. Just lots of classic horror tropes in the end that I thought worked really well. So I would give it probably maybe like a 6.5, 7 out of 10 total. Like I said, definitely my least favorite of the three so far, but still another
4.
really interesting entry. What?
4.
I said of three. My apologies.
Yeah.
Of the 4.
Of the 3 weeks, though, I guess. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for the save there.
Yeah. So I guess I'm on a little bit of a different track here because I like this one more than last week. Because I talked about it last week as well. That one was my least favorite just because I've been wanting more of the present day stuff, and because I really liked the characters in the present day, and not being able to see Master Soul, and we saw him in the other one, but like not for long, right? And we were missing Amandla Stenberg in last week's too. So I thought this one for me worked a little bit better than last week, and I thought it was for me. I would probably put it like third. Like I would think the first 2 would go as the best still at this point, with then 4 and then 3 in there. But because I don't know, I maybe it was the high of the cliffhanger, but man, when I was done this episode, I was like, I ran downstairs to like give my dogs their medicine, and then okay, he didn't react to that, and then good. And like I just kept telling myself like, man, that was a great episode, right? And my wife at the point was like, what are you saying in there? I was like, no, I was just saying how great of an episode that was. I'm just talking to myself.
I love
it. Yeah, so I really, like you said, when that Sith is just like floating down, and it's not even like in focus, right? Like it kind of looks like my background here where it's a little blurred, and you just see like subtly them creeping in. And just the way that May reacted to like, oh, he's here. Like she knew at that point it wasn't going to go well.
Yeah.
I kind of saw the Kelnaka thing coming. Like when she walked in there, I was like, yeah, he's dead. Like it can't go that simple for her. But overall, I just really dug the way that, especially the way that the ending happened. But like in the build up to it too, I really liked May and Qimir when they're interacting. So it's a shame that he's left upside down, if that's how he's left right now, right? We don't who is he, right? I know, Ron, I saw your message. Go ahead. I saw your tweet.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see Sawyer's thoughts on this too, but it feels like such a red herring. Like they were doing everything but throwing it in your face in this episode that they want you to think that Qimir is this master. It starts with the conversation when him and May first get there, and she's like skeptical of how she found Kelnaka to begin with. She makes a comment about like, you found him in this, I forget what exactly the wording was, but basically just
it was the woods, because he says so many people have
with mountains, and
he says so many people have gone in there and died, and she's like, but you went in there and found them. So yeah.
And then the next conversation we get with them, there's the part when she's questioning him about the deal he made with the master, and I owe him, and him, he just likes to collect people. And then when they have him get like strung up by May's trap, and that feels very much like, oh, we're trying to make you think that he's out of the equation, but in reality it's him. Like it's just way too much stuff lined up to where it feels like it would be a little predictable for it to just be Qimir. I think he could still be involved in a way that we don't know, a little more deep into this thing than we think, but I don't think he is the masked person or the one above them by any means.
Any thoughts on that, Sawyer?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I don't know. I mean, I agree. I think it was a little too in the face, but I also feel like there's so little that we know about the Darth Teeth guy in general, and we don't even know if he's a Sith. So I'm kind of leaning towards Darth Teeth is Qimir, but he's not the master.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's probably the Acolyte, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that whoever their master is trying to use May and Osha,
Mm-hmm.
and probably has a connection to what happened on Brendock, and yeah, I mean, I could go on about stuff that I talked about with other people yesterday, but like, yeah, no, I think, I also don't think that the Sith is like anybody we're familiar with in name or anything.
Just gonna ask.
I think there's just more to be revealed, and kind of my working theory about how the rest of the show is going to go down, because they keep giving us all of this information and it almost feels like they're feeding it to us. And I know that a lot of people have echoed the sentiment of like, well, they said it was a mystery, but all these these questions are being answered, like what's the mystery? I think what's actually going to happen is that by episode 7 we're going to have a wrap up of like most of the present day stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
episode 8 is going to go back and tell you what's actually going on, and then like what actually happened with the fire, and then what's the aftermath of that, what actually is going on behind the scenes, and
Mm-hmm.
lead into possibly where we could go in future seasons. So
It's kind of like that old saying. What is it? Like, just when you think you have the answers, I change the question. I feel like there's a lot of that going on in this show, where they'll give you those small little reveals of like the first one I can think of is in the first episode they had that, like, oh, was it actually Osha doing this stuff? Like the way that they strategically cut from that opening scene with May and Indara right to Osha and the ship, and they're kind of questioning like, where were you last night, sort of stuff. So they have those like little things, those little mysteries along the way that they're, kind of revealing while keeping the really big stuff still kind of close to vest.
Yeah, when you talk about what the mystery of the show is and how they said it's a mystery, all that kind of stuff, I do think people have taken that a little too like on the nose a bit, in the sense of they kind of thought, oh, because the way that the trailers are presented, it's a murder mystery, and that's
Mm.
not really what it was. We kind of could tell who was going to be murdering the Jedi.
Yeah.
It was going to be May, right, from the trailers alone. But I I actually kind of like how they're doing it more than just a murder mystery type thing, even though I love murder mysteries. This is a way a mystery show should work. There should be questions that are getting answered as you go, but then setting up new questions. So that way you feel like you're making progress. Like I felt like at the end of this episode, I think one reason why I liked it is because of May's turn in this, where she's like, no, I thought Osha was dead. So obviously my whole reason for revenge is gone. Right. Like, so I just want to be with my sister and move on. So I'm out. Thank you. I'm gone. But I didn't see that coming in this type of story. So then seeing that twist, and now the question is, all right, who's the Sith, right? Or who is whoever the man in the mask is? And we'll probably get that answer sometime before the show wraps up, and we also have the other question of what really happened, right? So for anybody that thought there wasn't going to be another side of the story on Brindock, Soul mentions it here. He's like, he tells Osha, I will tell you what actually happened as soon as this is done. I don't know if he's going to get the
He
chance
is
to.
so dead, by the way. Like Ned Stark 101, dude. Like, I hate to say it because I love Soul to death already, but like, I'm starting to be afraid for all of my my Jeckie senses are going crazy right now because I'm terrified that she's going to be killed too, especially
Yeah.
with how much they kind of like started to build up her and Osha's connection in this episode. So I have a bit of a working theory right now that I still haven't gotten my way all the way through yet, but we see May turn to the light, so to speak, in this episode. I don't know if you'd really go that far with it, but basically seems to be kind of going back on all of her motivations we've seen in the show so far. Meanwhile, we get some stuff with Osha, like she mentions to Jackie about how like she couldn't accept death like how a Jedi should. Very like kind of like almost Anakin-esque kind of stuff in there. And then we see at the end that this Sith, or this, again, we're not sure what exactly they are, but they just kind of throw Osha out of the way using the Force. So I'm wondering if we're getting a swap here where like we're going to see Osha maybe kind of like start to show some of those dark side tendencies as we're seeing May kind of relent off of hers a little bit in a way. That I think that would be kind of an interesting way to go about it, especially if this thing does end with Soul and Jecki and all these people being killed. Like I feel like that's something that could really drive Osha towards the hate and the anger that is the well known predecessor for transitioning over to the dark side.
Yeah, I've seen that theory a lot of like they're gonna flip.
Oh,
Almost like
really?
yeah.
Man, I thought I had
Sorry.
something there. Damn it.
Sorry, Ron. But because of like I don't know if you want to look at it like a yin yang situation, right?
Yeah,
Where it's like,
yeah.
because people have kind of looked at him as like a dyad, but also if you want to just look in it almost like a yin yang, where like one is going to be good, one is going to be dark, and maybe because if you want to look at it like destiny in that sense, like maybe because May has started to turn back to light, then one has to go back to the dark.
Yeah.
But I think it's more like
Balance.
May is just kind of indifferent now to it. Like, like not so much that she's turning to the light, but like she had said, like my whole thing is done. Like I just want to be off doing my own thing. It's not like she still thinks the Jedi are scum, right? She says, I can't believe my sister is part of that like Jedi scum. But yeah, she was going to turn herself in. She was going to see how that goes. Qimir is like, they're going to kill you or they're going to like lock you away. You're not going to just be able to roll off and do whatever you want. He had a point there. I don't think she gets off scot-free. But though
No.
I do know Soul, did want to bring her in, right? He wanted to save her like he hadn't had the chance to 16 years ago.
Well, and also Qimir has, as she's walking away, he has that like really chilling line where he's like, he'll kill you. And that's another thing that it felt like it was very much them trying to push that narrative that he's the one behind the mask. But I am kind of curious to hear if you guys thought that the May flip was a little abrupt, because it kind of was for me, admittedly, especially going from one scene where she's calling them Jedi scum, and then the next she's like, I'm just gonna turn myself in. Actually, like,
well,
even...
what I was gonna say is for me it didn't feel that janky, I guess, but like when she was saying about the Jedi scum thing, I do think it felt a little performative. Because at that point he wasn't tied up yet. It seems like she was still kind of stringing him along a bit until she could get him alone, like until she could get alone to set the trap. Because as soon as he leaves, she starts grabbing the rope to set the trap, and then that's when her real motivations come out, is when he's tied up. So I think it was like I gotta keep acting the same way of like, oh man, I can't believe she's Jedi scum. Oh. And then, okay, now you've stepped away. I'm going to set the trap. And now she lets out her real motivations, because she couldn't do that if he was not tied up. So for me, I think she's kind of stringing him along here, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I don't think that it was. I mean, I did feel like it was abrupt, but I also, because of the abruptness of it, I wasn't 100% sure that it was genuine. I think that because from the start, May has kind of questioned the rules that she's been given, the challenge of killing someone unarmed, and that's been with her the entire show so far. But it always usually comes back to, no, I think it just matters that I do it. I'm gonna do it my way. So I kind of, yes, it felt abrupt, but it didn't feel so much like, oh, I'm actually, like, it almost felt like she was trying to develop a scheme. Like, oh, okay. But at the same time, I do think that she's having some conflict because she knows her sister is alive. But yeah, I don't know. I just, I feel like there's more to that.
I
That is,
agree.
I think she also is probably distrustful of Qimir at this point. She should be anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that there was a little bit of like rebelliousness to it, like, hey, actually, I'm gonna prove to you and to the master that I can do this my way, and I'm gonna put you in a trap, and I'm gonna go. I yeah, that's kind of my thought, my justification for why it felt so sudden.
Yeah, I'm very much with you on that. When she was like explaining her plan of like, I'm gonna turn myself in and I'm gonna get captured, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop of like, and then when the Jedi are at their weakness and they think that they have me captured, that's when I'll like, basically laying out a plan that was, not as cut and dry as just I'm actually gonna turn myself in now. So yeah, you both make some very good points there. I still, yeah, all in all, I would say it did feel a little abrupt, but I'm not writing it off yet because it definitely feels like there's more to that, whether it's that sort of yin and yang theory we started with, or just her, May kind of having more in mind than we've been led on to believe so far.
Yeah, I guess like for me, it's more of like this whole like we might get more of this in whatever flashback happens next, right? Because there's going to be at some point she is approached by somebody after the place is ablaze, and she is told that her sister is dead, and she's told that the Jedi are part of the ones that caused this, with her and her family being dead, her whole
Well,
like
that's why it
witches.
felt really abrupt, not to cut you off, but like, yes, her sister's alive, which is ultimately the most important. Here we go again with me saying ultimately. People who listen to our other podcasts, they'll know what we're talking about. But like, she's still under the assumption that the Jedi killed her entire family otherwise. Like, you'd think that would still be enough to kind of keep her on that sort of vendetta she's on, but I guess not.
Well, yeah, for me, I think it's like if I found out that the person who told me that my sister is dead was wrong about that, then I would think that they're wrong about a lot of stuff. Like
Planting the
I would
seed of
start
doubt.
questioning it
Yeah.
a bit.
Yeah.
I would probably start questioning it and be like, you know what? I just want to spend time with my sister. I'm out of here.
Mm.
We're both going to escape and be happy together. Because that's what she always wanted to begin with, right? She originally started the fire because she didn't want her sister to leave. And we don't know exactly how that escalated. But in her mind, it's always just been us two should be together with our family. Who knows if that's what Osha actually wants?
Yep. All right, so shall we shall we get into the Kiadi Mundi of it all?
If we want to, yeah. I mean, Kiadi does appear. At first, I thought this was just another Jedi of the same species,
Me too.
but the credits confirm it is Kiadi. So he is now, however old, I guess, because this is 132 years before Battle of Yavin, I believe. So I don't know. He's got to be like in his 150s, 160s by the time we get to the Phantom Menace or so. And I think one reason I said this to you off air, Ron, I think one reason why people are latching onto this so much, even though his age was never mentioned in canon material, is because he is the one that's been the anti-acolytes poster boy with the he's the one that says Sith were dead for a millennia. So why did they have to use him? Is what I feel like they're arguing about, though. He did kind of seem like Kiadi though. Kiadi is very head in the sand type of guy, and that's how it felt here.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I thought it looked like him. It's not the same actor, but I looked like him, and uh, two of us were like, "Oh yeah, that's Kiadi," and the other one was like, "No, that's definitely not him." But then, yes, with the credits confirmed that it is him. I did think it was an interesting choice, for especially because like Yariel Poof is relevant to the High Republic era. He's on the council during the time of the High Republic. I still expect to see him in later episodes, perhaps, but you know, uh, nobody cared about Kiadi birth date until today.
Yep.
Not a single person. And frankly, I don't know that we have any we have a couple of confirmed like years, but I can't think of anybody in canon who has a confirmed like daytime, like, you know, place
Yeah.
where you were born, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. But yeah, it could be that could have been the reason why they chose Kiadi to appear, because of
His
his
line, I think so.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's not, that whole conversation with the council, the I don't know, the lower council, I guess,
Yeah.
um, is about perhaps a rogue Jedi training
Hmm.
May, right? They're not even
Mhm.
considering the possibility that
Like
Sith are
a
involved.
splinter group was like
And
the word.
he's
Yeah.
not on the planet. He did not go to KOTOR.
Hmm.
So he is still unaware, is what I would say. Um,
Yeah, and I also think that we have to consider the possibility that the well, I, we'll see where next week's episodes take our band of lovable Jedi that we've grown to be so fond of over the past couple of weeks. But I would have to assume that the Jedi Order as an entity cannot know that Sith dealings were at play
Hmm.
in order for everything to check out to where we're at in the prequels.
Hmm.
So I think we should be and I don't think that that's there are some things that get written over in canon or overlooked from comics and books, and I understand that people care about continuity, and that can be frustrating, especially if it's one of your favorite stories. But I think some things have more weight than others, and that would be one of them. Like we need to have these prequel Jedi be completely unaware of the Sith.
Hmm.
I don't I trust these writers. I trust this writing team. So far, they have put out really interesting content that also ties back. We've had references to KOTOR. We've had references
mhm.
to there was like an explicit reference to the Plagueis novel in this past episode. Like I trust that they would not make a mistake like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, when
So,
you hear Leslie Headland talk about how much she loves the ODU and the prequels and stuff, I do have faith in that. One of the writers was on Twitter answering people last night. Claire Kiechel. Somebody said in episode 1 he said the Sith were extinct for 1,000 years. So either he was lying in episode 1 or else oopsie he forgot. Neither option is great. Not to worry for me in my head. I don't consider any of this actual Star Wars, but do feel bad for the people who still do. So she replied, he has never known about any Sith during that time. So I think it's pretty clear that he will never know about uh, what events are transpiring
Hmm.
on there. And somebody said, so you never seen the Phantom Menace? And she said, probably seen it 40 times, obsessed as a kid. So I mean, like, these people do know the
Yeah.
lore. And of course, this stuff has to get approved by Filoni and the story group anyway. So,
Hmm.
uh, you know, it, it's nothing to be upset about right now. I kind of am so frustrated with the whole Wikipedia of it all, especially because um, the fact that this is taking on a life of its own right now when the show's not even done. Like there are
Yeah.
still it's still going to get answered. Like I don't understand why, and this is going for every fandom lately, where a TV show can't even have a mystery in an episode that doesn't get resolved because people say, I'm still confused. It's like, yeah, you're supposed to be. I don't
Yeah.
understand why like people are not. I guess it's I don't know if it's the people used to binging now or what, but
yeah, I
the
definitely think that that has a role to play. We've had a lot of conversations about this kind of thing on Yap Shesh, and the shift that a lot of us have seen from what it was like to engage when or in fandom when the internet was a little newer, when social media was a little newer, when we started to see MySpace evolve into Facebook and then Instagram and and Twitter, like that there's been a shift about around when COVID started, right? Like there's this new I don't know. Watch the podcast. We talk about it a lot, but it is interesting. It does feel like people have a shorter attention span nowadays. I do think things like TikTok have played into that a lot, and also there's just like I don't know. It feels like there's a certain degree of entitlement that
Hmm.
I can't tell you exactly where it came from, but yeah, I do think streaming definitely had a part to play. Because even that, even going back just like 6-7 years, people used to live tweet their Game of Thrones watch, like
Mhm.
they would
Yeah.
have these big watch parties, and then they would live tweet the episode, and it was a huge community event, and nobody was getting mad at each other. Maybe they were getting mad at D&D, but that's not the same. um, but like, but and now it's like you can't post spoilers on the internet, and if you got to be very everybody's really touchy about what you talk about, and like it's just different. I don't know, something shifted
Mhm.
and it's not the same.
And also, like you mentioned, about overwriting canon and stuff, like you said, sometimes you get like the books, like Bad Batch overwrote like Kanan's
Mhm.
comic or whatever. That stuff to me doesn't really matter as much. But when you get to the movies, yeah, that used to be called G level canon back in the old
Mhm.
EU, which was anything George touched was G level. And there's this misconception that he cared about canon, and literally he had it broken down to like G level, C level, S level, all that kind of stuff. And G level was anything he says goes, and he would overwrite stuff left and right. And I remember back then being, when I would read stuff, it'd be like, well, like when I read some of the expanded universe that took place after episode 6, I would read it, but I would still feel like it's not official, right? I'd be like, oh, this
Mhm.
is like until George says otherwise. And
Yeah.
you just know if George did episode 7, he would not have done what those books did. So, um,
And
yeah,
I just don't, like yes, there is the argument that George Lucas was not a fan of a lot of the EU because he wasn't. But also I really, there was a Star Wars adjacent novel published before the first movie was released. It was meant to be in conjunction with it, and why can't I think of the name of the guy who wrote it?
Alan
But
Dean Foster.
right, okay,
Yeah.
and he's written some other Star Wars books, and he wrote that book based off a older script of what eventually became A New Hope. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The opening chapter describes Palpatine as this benevolent guy who doesn't realize that his empire is doing these things like behind the scenes. It's like but that was considered part of the canon storyline. Star Wars has never just belonged to George Lucas, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And like there have always been books and comics and other stories that have been contributed by other authors, and I don't think if you sat him down and asked him like what do you like, I don't think he would tell you like, yeah, like the real Star Wars is what I wrote, because a
Right.
lot
Right.
of it he didn't write, or a lot of it he had input from other people, and he gave the go ahead. Maybe he didn't love the EU, but he gave the go ahead for so many people to
Yeah.
write in the Star
Like I
Wars
think
universe.
I think Coruscant was not one of his creations.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
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 So there
And
you
he's
go.
on record. I mean, he's on record saying he loved Obi-Wan and stuff too. It's not like he just thinks that everything that he didn't do is crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to like kind of wrap it back around to the initial point we were talking about, so much of what we've seen isn't like, I don't think it's changing anything. Kind of going back to the conversation we had in here last week with Jessica, there's a massive difference between changing canon and adding to it. Nothing that
Mhm.
we've seen so far in this show breaks canon or changes canon, except for if you want to do the Kiadi Mundi's birthday thing, which go nuts. If that's your biggest gripe, go nuts. But like, they make a very specific point to not mention it's Sith. They said it could be a splinter group of Force users. Um, um, I do this all the time. Help me. Green.
Vernestra.
Lights. Vernestra Rowe makes a point. I do it every time for some reason with her. Like makes a point to like her last point when she's talking around the table to all the Jedi is that this has to be one of us. Basically, like throwing all these possibilities out there and all of them basically refusing to acknowledge that this might actually be a Sith situation. It's like they're like that whole possibility is so far from the Jedi like mindset that it's really kind of like the building block for by the time we get to the Phantom Menace, like they're so unprepared for the Sith arrival, like because for over 100 years now, it's hasn't even been a possibility in their mind that this could be a thing, even in a situation like this where it's very much if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, like in the Acolyte situation right now, they're still not even mentioning that the Sith could be a possibility, like amongst the Jedi. So I don't think it breaks canon at all. I think it's just adding to it and showing why they were at the point they were at when we got to the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, so Vernestra immediately thinks this is a person that's trained by the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't it cross their mind that maybe a Jedi would have turned to the ways of the Sith, and it could still both be right? Like they could still be a former Jedi and also a Sith. Is it just because they've been disappeared for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if either of you two have read the High Republic books, but
Yes. Yep.
He has.
yeah. So I mean, okay.
I have.
So
Ron's
I
not a real
think
fan. Don't worry about it.
I think that it's very clear, and I especially got this sense after the first 2 episodes dropped. I don't. First of all, Vernestra was a very pointed choice for bringing a High Republic character into live action because she has a very dedicated fan base within the overarching High Republic fan base. I don't think that Leslie Headland would have made that choice without knowing exactly what she was getting into bringing this character into live action and the love that so many people have for this character and what Vernestra represents because she was 16 years old when everything unfolded in the High Republic, in the first phase of the High Republic. And I think that's why she's kind of stoic and why she's gone more towards the rule following Jedi that we see in the prequel era. You know, she's seen a lot of loss. She saw a lot of hardship in the very, very early years of her life, really early years of her life now that we know how long she's lived.
And her master Stellan, and this is how he is. So
exactly. So I think that the version of the Jedi Order that Vernestra has been with has seen immense loss and immense suffering and immense fear from things that were not directly related to Force sensitivity. Really quite the opposite with the Nameless. And so I think that the Jedi, at least how I see it, is these Jedi are not in, like, it's been so long since there has been a Sith threat and they've been exposed to so many. They've been exposed to force sensitive plant monsters and the Nihil and force hating cults and stuff like that. And so like when they're thinking a threat, they're thinking literally anything other than the Sith because it's been so long. So I just don't think that would even, I think they think the Sith are extinct.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this, you called it maybe the lower council. How do we think this does work here, right? Because you have the high council that they reference, which is what we assume is the normal Jedi council. That's, what we're used to. Yeah. But we have this council here, which maybe it's not a formal council, but it does have like Ki-Adi-Mundi. It has Vernestra. It has Master Soul. Like all of them trying to work this thing out, and they're like, we can't tell anybody upstairs, pretty much, that this is going on. How does that work? How can they how does Vernestra have power like this in the sense of you would think she'd be on the High Council as long as she's been active and she was a Jedi Knight at 16 years old, this Wunderkind, right? But here she is not on the High Council, and she still has, it seems like, total autonomy to do whatever she needs to do and send people to do whatever they need to without getting approval from the High Council.
Well, part of me wonders if this is like this whole thing is off the books. I mean, because they make a point to mention not telling the High Council or the Senate. Maybe this whole thing is just like a little task force, so to speak, that she put together specifically for this. And the information about it is, there's maybe 4 or 5 people that aren't directly involved who actually know. It's going to have to be something like that, like just because of like the points that Sawyer mentioned about how it's there's too much, like there's got to be a way in this show to where a bunch of people don't come out of it knowing that this was a Sith, if that's the route it ends up being. For all we know, it could end up not even being a Sith at the end of the day, and we'll all look silly. Although I think we have a pretty good idea that it's much more likely than not a full-blown Sith at the crux of all this. I just it's one of those things that you would think if they were trying to keep it on the hush hush that they would maybe put together a small team of like 4 or 5 Jedi that they can sort of like counsel with and have different takes on it, but ultimately not blow it up into this big thing where the High Council's involved and then the Senate finds out, and then we kind of get that like kind of a replay of the Yoda and Mace Windu conversation about keeping things from the Senate and what it would do for the Jedi kind of like reputation and all that stuff. So my thoughts on it is that this whole thing is off the books, and it is purposely kept in a place where as few people know about it as possible, kind of like a need to know basis sort of thing.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I mean, in the first episode, we have Indara contacting the Jedi Order when May walks into the bar, and I think that whoever took that message was either, in association with the High Council, or perhaps it was Vernestra herself, somebody who is very revered in the Jedi Order. I don't think that the initial murder was a secret.
Okay.
I think that this council kind of reminds me of like playing the original KOTOR, because when you go to Dantooine, you're told that those 3 Jedi are the council, but they're the council on Dantooine. That's
Right,
not actually the High Council. So that's kind of how I perceived it. And also, we see the temple that Torben is at, and they're kind of self-contained.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think that this is just a time, in a very prosperous time for the Jedi, where they're still, we've already done the great works, and we've already expanded out into the outer reaches. There are more Jedi temples. There are, spread out all across the galaxy, and they kind of are these self-sufficient entities of the Jedi that have somebody running each temple who reports back to the Jedi on Coruscant. So I think that there is like, but obviously we're getting closer towards a more politicized version of the Order, because Vernestra says, "Hey, the High Council is going to involve the Senate," and that's that.
Yeah.
No.
Reeked of
So
prequel Jedi.
right. So we're in this kind of weird like halfway point, but I think that just the sheer amount of Jedi that are around, and because this is a time of peace where all of this is going down, I do think that there are more Jedi in more places with more autonomy. I don't know. That didn't strike me as that odd. And because they don't actually know the level of the threat that they're dealing with, why would they feel a need to tell the High Council? I almost feel like they're not really trying to like keep it hush hush. More so, they're just trying to keep it self contained so it doesn't get unnecessary levels of attention.
Yeah.
They don't want to scare. If the Senate's involved, they don't want to scare the entirety of the Galactic Republic.
Takes on a life of its own at that point.
Right? Yeah.
It's kind of like making a mistake at work, and the rest of your coworkers are like, so we're not telling the boss about this, right? Like, we're keeping this.
Yeah, just a little murder. We're just gonna not
just not tell anybody about this. But no, to your point, they did have a total different setup back then, right? Because like you said, they have these other temples that they're on, and actually part of the Living Force novel that came out recently is them going and closing some of those old Jedi temples and like stations that they've been on. They keep mentioning that the Jedi were stationed on Bryndock, right?
Yeah.
But like from what we heard before, like they were not. That I want to get more on that. Maybe we will on the next flashback, because the way it seemed from the witch's point of view, right? It was that they were there for them, and the rest of the planet's
like,
uninhabited. So why are you stationed here?
That. Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
So curious to see how they explain that a bit more. You ready for my hot take on what next week's episode is going to be called?
Oh, oh boy. I
Night.
think I might know where you're going, but
Night, if this one's called Day. But yeah, I mean, what a shocking revelation that would be. It's something that I think they did very well with, where they kept saying about the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 3 hours left of light, by the time that May and Qimir get there. And it's when it is turning night is when she is in the Kelnaka's place and the Sith is arriving. And it just totally changed the tone of the episode, and why I'm totally fine with that being broken up into 2. Apparently, the writer responded to people's response on that too, because they said, I hope I don't sound rude, but if I may ask, are they mandating y'all to keep the episodes short? Wish they were longer like other streamers. And she said, we wrote this one and next week's together, and they kind of had a total ballpark limit for both. For reasons, next week's had to be longer, so this one had to be shorter. And they think that this one is the shortest of the 8.
We're gonna lose somebody next week.
Yeah, there was a few like nameless, faceless Jedi that were along on this mission.
Yeah, they're red shirts.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna lose a lot of those characters next week, but we are gonna lose somebody important next week.
I think so too. I think the Yord Horde may not be very long for this world.
No!
I know. I don't mean to break everyone's hearts, but like
my
feels
sticker's
like
on its way. Oh.
No more shirtless steaming robes.
Because tell me he doesn't feel like the one that would step up in front and be like, I've got this, and then he just gets like decapitated or something. Like, not that won't literally.
I hope he's not that confident. He would have just seen Osha get tossed with 2-finger force flick and be like, no, I still got this. Like,
Stand
that
back.
would be great.
I can do that too, yeah.
Yeah. I really did believe that Kelnaka, just because I thought it was too simple. And obviously Kelnaka was not offed by May, but when that seemed like that was the trajectory that we were going down, I thought, okay, they're not going to have her successfully kill the 2 Jedi, and then immediately she's going to kill the 3rd. I was so certain that he would survive this encounter. I'm not disappointed in the way that he went out. Like, I think it was very creepy, very horror vibes, like, the whole tone shift at the end of the episode. And now that you've mentioned that, they were, like, meant to go together, I wonder what it would be like to just stitch them together and watch the whole thing. We haven't even seen next week's episode, but I really did think he was gonna pull through, unfortunately.
I assume the reasons they're talking about on why this one had to be shorter is budget stuff. Like, they have a certain amount per episode or for the season, and it was probably like, all right, if we did all of this as one episode, we would stretch the budget. But if we did this as half and this one is a little longer, we can do those big fights or whatever is going to happen in the next episode.
Well, and we know that they probably mean in this location specifically, because this was filmed at the Brecon Beacons National Park in Wales. So you'd imagine that when they're talking about this sort of like ballpark that they had to fit into, it's probably because they had a set amount of days and a set amount of dollars to film these 2 episodes in this one very specific and probably very expensive location. So that's probably what they're referring to. Like, they had a sort of window that they just had to fit into for their time at this exact location. I do hope for next episode though they continue some of that horror stuff that we saw, especially if it's called Night. Like, I would love it if we get like the group gets kind of after this big like battle with the Sith, like everyone's kind of scattered in different directions, and we get like some good moments between Osha and Jecki again. We get like some Yord and Soul stuff. Like, basically everybody kind of split off, and some more of those good character moments that we saw some of this week. That'd be good.
And he's like hunting them like a horror
Predator
thriller
style. The movie Predator. Hell yeah. Like, that'd be dope.
Yeah. Or they could really lean into it and be like Friday the 13th or something, right? And as soon as one of them's running, they trip and they look back and he's right there, and then they look up and he's right in front of them again. Like, they could really
keep going to the tropes. Yeah, they're fun. Like, I don't say trope in a negative way. Like, there's just certain stuff that you can do that can really like add to this kind of format, this Star Wars format. I love Star Wars and horror as a concept in general. So the more we can get of it, the better.
Yeah, I think I had something else I wanted to say that I'm kind of blanking on. But it was related to the ending. Oh, so look, I'm fine if it's Qimir as this, because I do think I want to be able to watch it back again and be like, okay, there's hints to this thing. Like, I don't want it to be like this out of left field where it's like it's actually Master Indara, and you're like, what? Like, where did this happen? I want it to make sense. And so if we are speculating that it's him, When did he kill Kalnaka? Was it when he went to get the water refilled before she screams?
I don't think so. I think that there was a lot of time between like when May leaves him like strung up by his ankle to when it turns nighttime. There was probably a good
Well,
maybe an
she said
hour
it's
or
only
so.
10 minutes away from where they
Oh,
are, right? She says,
oh,
10 minutes that way.
then
So
yeah, probably.
I thought maybe Kalnaka's already dead at that point then.
Yeah, probably then. I didn't catch that 10 minutes part. Then yeah, that would probably be it when he went off the first time. Yeah.
And is it just like a Thanos thing of fine, I'll do it myself? Because he felt like the hesitation from her.
Yeah. Because that was, you would think if he is this, all powerful force user, that he would be able to sense all of this uncertainty in May, especially as it's growing and growing as they're getting closer and closer to Kalnaka. Maybe him going away for the water was kind of his like, all right, to me, you're a lost cause, so to speak. So now let me go do this myself. And then that would even support that whole yin yang, him going for Osha thing now that we were talking about too.
Yeah, because she seems like the stronger of the two, right? Osha, maybe?
I don't know. I don't think I've really gotten that vibe too much. I think they're probably pretty equal. I could be wrong there, but
yeah, I guess I just got that thought because she was trained as a Jedi for a bit, but I guess technically so was May, trained in the dark side. So, I guess it depends on that. But Osha's starting to say she's starting to feel things come back to her, right? She mentions like, I'm starting to feel stuff again, and we had that scene where she accidentally kills the creature on the tree, like wakes it up, and then Soul has to cut it down.
Yeah, that was I don't really know the purpose of that scene, to be honest with you.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I think it was for the after part of that where she tells Yord if I hesitate, you got to be able to do it, right? Like I think that's what it was set up for. But at first I was kind of confused as well. I'm like, why are we seeing this? But she says, look, I couldn't do that. Soul had to jump in and like do that because I was weak, and I need you to be able to do it because I hesitated on May before or whatever. Like that's the only reason I can think that's
and if that was the goal, that's kind of weak. I could see why that people would feel like that was a little forced. All it really did with me was conjure up like bad memories of all those bugs in Jedi Fallen Order that just pop
Yeah.
out.
Oh yeah.
Like I was just like, enough of this.
It's another reason why Survivor is my favorite of those two games. There's none of those bugs.
They do it in Survivor too. Those bastards are everywhere, man. They'll be popping out of the ground and caves.
They're not
and
as
stuff.
frequent though. I feel like
No.
Fallen Order. I guess with how many times I had to go to Zepho, they were everywhere all the time. It annoyed me.
Yeah.
All right. I guess anything else about Day before we wrap it up, or any speculation for next week before we wrap it up?
No, I don't. I think we pretty much covered everything here. We assume again that the next week will be night. I already ran down kind of the basic loose format of how I would like the episode to go, and I'm just really interested to see where we go from here. So.
All right, Sawyer, if you want to tell everybody where they can follow you on social media or where they can find your podcast or any of your socials.
Yeah. Will they be able to see my name card?
I'll put a different one up there, but yeah, if you wanted to
Gotcha.
let me know.
So yeah, I'm Sawyer, otherwise known as Sawyerism on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, all the places. I got really lucky with that. And I also host Yap Shesh podcast on YouTube and on Spotify. We also have all the other socials as well. I host it with my good friend Brooke, aka B Dazzler. Would not be the podcast that it is without her. We make a great team, I think, and we are really trying to highlight voices that don't get an opportunity to speak share their experiences rather in the fandom. So please check us out. We post every Wednesday, and we're posting every other Monday as well right now, reviewing episodes of the Acolyte. So yeah, that's that.
Awesome.
And thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
It was a
Thanks
blast.
for coming
Absolutely. Hell yeah, I'd love to have you again sometime.
Anytime.
And this show at Pod Awakens on all of our social media, or email us podawakens@gmail.com. Ron, that's your cue for the CEO Bibble face that you have to
You
make here?
must contact us.
Yes, you must contact us at podawakens@gmail.com for all of our long form. You can also like and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel or rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you all for watching or listening along. We will catch you next time when we talk episode 5, to be named later.